Welcome back. So we've gone over the factors that invisibly undermine our relationships. And this causes a conflict cycle. And what is really interesting about conflict cycles is we don't actually have lots of versions of these. We fundamentally only have one. Now guess why we only have one way of behaving when we get into a cycle, when we get into conflict? Why would that be the case? It's because we're programmed from childhood to repeat what we naturally did in childhood. So we become robots. So in this business, the conflict is the cycle that keeps repeating in one form or another. We keep going into the same self-beliefs, we keep racking up the same emotions that overflow, we keep getting triggered by the same things that are being said. We are very, very predictable. So the conflict is the cycle fueled by those unbridled monsters we looked at earlier. It is really our intention to argue or be nasty. That usually is part of our conflict pattern, and we hardly ever do it intentionally unless we stay with resentment, and the resentment sort of eats away at us. And then what we do is, because we haven't dropped resentment, every now and again we throw something at our partners. But we're still in our cycle. We still do it our own predictable way. So the conflict is always a power play. It's a power play to try not to be heard, try to be prioritized, try to be seen, try to be understood. Basically, it's always a power play to try and get our needs met. Needs that are often invisible. So, to escape the prison created by conflict, we must do these things. Know, own, and manage our emotional reactivity and hold it in check. That's what we're doing before the break. If we know those emotions and we say, oh, here I go again, okay, I'm just going to take a break, I'll be back later, I'm just going to go for a walk, or we do something to manage so that we can take responsibility and not vomit something over somebody else, then that's good, because the crucial thing is, though, that if you go away and do that, you come back and you still address the problem. Notice that our biggest fear is being controlled, dictated to, disempowered, having no say. That's a human problem, because we all want to be empowered in our lives. We all want to have a say. So what happens in conflict is actually we fear we're not going to have a say. Our view, our priorities, all that stuff will get washed away. So that gets us anxious. Lastly, recognize that no one can control us. No one can control us. They try, or we let them, but no one really can control us. And that the way forward is for both parties to be heard and considered. So it's very simple, really. All they've got to do is calm everybody down and they listen to each other. But there are a few bits in that are a little bit difficult. It's important to understand that both parties have a valid viewpoint, so both perspectives must be considered. Now that's difficult, because really what happens a lot of the time is viewpoints are so far apart that one person says, that's not valid, or no, you haven't got it right. And it's true that one person may not know the whole picture, but it's still valid, even if they only got a bit of the picture. If you treat everyone's viewpoint as valid and try to understand where they're coming from, it takes a lot of the heat out of conflict. Right versus right arguments stem from fears that we won't be heard or that what matters to us will not be considered. And right versus right arguments is the most common pattern people have. What frequently occurs, though, is that one person gives up trying to be right. In other words, they give up trying to be heard. And so in actual fact, then one person is dominating discussion. From then on, because their viewpoint is the one that they think is valid, and now that their partner's closed down, they think, right, okay, I'll just go do it. Not realising that there's a relationship that they've completely overlooked and that they've sabotaged by just going ahead and being self-empowered to do their own thing. So not listening is a form of control so as to avoid disempowerment. Such control or domination of one viewpoint never works in any relationship. So for example, if one person says, oh, okay, have your own way, and they go, and it looks like they've said okay, it's not okay. Because what's happened is they've given up on their power, they've said, they may look like, okay, all right, let's do what you want. And they may look, that's fine, but it's not fine. That is simply a way of minimizing additional conflict by saying I sort of give up my viewpoint or give up where I'm at, but actually the cost is huge because the person who is diminishing themselves is just going away and being not a problem. What's happening is they're going to slowly develop resentment, and resentment will eat away at the relations like a cancer. So our biggest fear is being controlled, dictated to, disempowered, having no say, being unseen, feeling diminished, feeling irrelevant. And if you've got any of those going on in a relationship, you really need to say, okay, I'm feeling a bit controlled, or I'm feeling I have to do it your way. Can we talk about this? Because if you sit with those, if any of those bottom ones are happening, the resentment will soon sabotage the relationship. And let me tell you, almost every relationship gets to that bottom line. Sooner or later. This is why you can start off really loving each other, and then 2 or 3 years down the track, where did that go? Why aren't we loving each other where you did? Because what's happened is resentment's undermined it because of this bottom disempowerment pattern. So this is serious, because most people don't realise they're in a serious problem that hasn't reached its final end point yet, but they're on the way. They're on a journey that often will have no return because they'll get too far down the track. Many couples who come to me, one person says, I'm done. And I say, do you have a little spark left? Like just a little spark? Because if you've got a little spark, like a little bit of caring or a bit of love, I can build on it. But once that's gone, the curtain's gone. It's curtains. Nothing's left. You can see how that happens. And it's ridiculous because those people start off really loving each other, doing nice things to each other. But this whole pattern plays out all the time and is completely invisible.
And often people come to see you as your therapist way too late. They should have come years ago. By the time they get in through the therapist's door, counsellor's door, their relationship's already on death's door because they've had such resistance to going to get professional
Or
help.
one person has.
Or one person has.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what often happens is one person sweeps the problem under the carpet more than the other. But that again is 2 different viewpoints just not being heard. It's the same pattern. Just around, we're dying. Are we going to have our funeral sooner or later? And I'm going to go and talk to someone about that funeral. But in actual fact, I can see you don't think the funeral's going to happen yet. So you're not on board with the funeral. Okay. I can't do anything about that. Right. So, as we've said, the conflict cycle causes love to be replaced by resentment and distrust. Secondly, the distrust means that self-preservation begins to dictate relationship dynamics. You're now in a place where you're going to survive. Because frequently you've committed to this person, you've got a house together, you have children together. So what happens is you can't just leave, so self-preservation keeps you, self-preservation is where you're at. What is really interesting with a lot of young people saying they're in 18s, early 20s, is they can jump out of a relationship. They can leave because they don't have a house, they don't have children. So they just leave a relationship, and many leave what would be really good relationships because they get to these difficulties. Oh, I'll just go and get someone else. You're no good for me. Clearly, you're no good for me. I'll go and get someone else.
You're the wrong person.
You're the wrong person.
Yeah.
And then they attract another person who turns out to be the wrong person also. It's we repeat the pattern. So self-preservation means that connection no longer matters as much as survival does. Now this is a terrible place to be in a relationship, and lots of people are in this, of course. This is where I don't love you anymore, but we just have to get by. Well, stay together for the children's sake. Or you just quietly harbour it, you just don't say anything about it, and you just try and box on, you hope it's going to get better, but you've got no strategies, because no one's got the strategies, and just hope it's going to get better. I hope we can be loving each other again one day. Sorry, the funeral is coming very soon. Right, the focus on self-preservation means that the focus on loving and affectionate connection gets minimised or lost altogether, because self-preservation is predominant. So what happens? What are symptoms of self-preservation? Not facing problems, just doing the work yourself instead of asking if we can do this together, just boxing on, just doing it on your own, just simply sucking it up, just making sure the boat is not rocked, because when the boat's rocked it's really difficult. So self-preservation means I'll just keep doing what seems to be safe and relatively comfortable. That means you've now disempowered yourself, because you're feeling like someone else is dictating the terms of the relationship. And that person may be completely oblivious of where you're at, because they're most likely an avoider who's not connecting with where you're at. Or if you're the anxious type, you'll just ramp up more often, more often, more often. Usually that will burn out and you'll become anxious avoidant. Okay, so the way forward is for both parties to be heard, considered, and treated equally and respectfully. Okay, it's very simple to say. Let's look at how that's done. Now, these numbers are odd because they're directly out of your book. This is all in chapter 29 of your book, chapter on listening. So these next couple of slides prioritize some of the bits in that chapter. Quality listening requires the ability to concentrate and focus on another and to put all of your own thoughts on hold. You have to learn to wait your turn. Now, there's a couple of things that undermine this. First of all, if you've been triggered, keeping quiet, as you'll know, is very difficult. It's not so difficult, though, if you know you're going to get your turn. If you've agreed that we'll both talk, and we'll both talk relatively equally, we'll both listen to each other, it takes the heat out of that. But the other thing that there's the problem is that some people over-talk and some people under-talk. And so what happens then is already an imbalance in even communicating. And the people who over-talk the most are normally the anxious types. And the reason they do that is because they're anxious that every point is made in order that you really understand where I'm coming from. The trouble is, what the anxious types don't understand is that their avoidant partners glaze over, can't cope,
Sorry,
have run out of energy. My wife would love to tell you the story about our relationship. What would you like to say about you guys here? What would you like to say?
I just know when I said too much because he just glazes over.
Yeah.
It's like a switch. It's really obvious.
Yeah.
With practice, I've got better.
Well, that's what it is.
I'm certainly not up to Lucy's standard yet, listening, but however, what happens to us? Let me tell you what happens. Avoidance, I'm an avoidant. Avoidance are logical. The anxious type is driven by an emotional pattern, more often an emotional pattern. So when they're driven by an emotional pattern, they're driven by a story, and the story isn't necessarily logical. It's an emotionally backed story. So what happens then is the avoidant, listening to this story, which goes up the path, over the hill, under the rock, around the tree, right? What happens is they completely get mesmerized by the story. And actually, they're put into a trance. And this is trance-inducing. You could sell this, know, you could sell it. You become a hypnotherapist by doing this. So the crucial thing to understand is if you're going to, if an anxious person is doing the talking, they're going to be most effective if they actually talk about their emotion. Now you might say, but an avoidant doesn't do emotion. However, an avoidant, if you say to an avoidant, I'm really upset about something, well, they usually say, oh, upset? What's that about? Because they get an emotion. Even if they don't do the emotions well, they get to hear an emotion, and that usually engages them. You can cut a whole story out and say, I'm really upset about what you didn't do. And the avoidant can say, what didn't I do? Right? If you do it, you can reel them in by giving them a little tantalizing teaser of something's going on here, are you interested? And if you use that emotional word, normally they'll be interested.
So can I say something here? Because part of my learning as an anxious and secure person has been learning to sit with my feelings long enough for me to get my own awareness around what I'm feeling and then take it to him. But if I don't do that and I just go into an emotional reaction, that's when I go to him with all of the story, which is when he glazes over and thinks, what is she talking about? But it's also when he's more likely to say, this isn't making any logical sense, because he can't get a feeling. And I don't know what I'm feeling either, because I haven't given myself the space to sit with it.
So in summary, it's a very good point. We're jumping ahead here, but it doesn't matter because we can go again. What Lucy's saying is that you can't really express where you're at unless you know where you're at. But the truth is, where people are at is a lot more predictable than you might think. We only do 3 or 4 key emotions. Generally speaking, the anxious and secure do hurt, anxiety, loneliness, sadness, in variations, like I may maybe say feel disempowered or something. There's slightly different words for similar things. Avoidance predominantly do shame, feel criticised, they get defensive, and then they can close down, so they get fearful of speaking up, they get fearful it's going to be the wrong thing to say, and so on. There are patterns, and if we know our patterns, we can own them and say, okay, I can see what's going on here. I'll jump back to this in a second. Let's just go to number 10. To stay focused on another person, we must do a few things. A, be aware of when you're feeling disempowered and be willing to sit with that. Now this is difficult. So your partner's talking to you and all of a sudden you're thinking, they haven't got it right. That's not what I said. That's not the story. Now they're barking up the wrong tree there. This frequently happens. But you have to sit with it because now what's happening is they're on a roll and you've got to sit with it. But if you've got an agreement, the natural fact they're not to speak for too long, it'll be your turn, you can sit with that. But remember, it can't be too long because the person listening will lose track of what they wanted to say. And that's not good because they'll say, well, go back to the previous one, I've got something to say about that. So what will happen if you make it too long, they'll get very discombobulated. Secondly, B, know when your buttons are being pushed and be able to sit with that. So, okay, I'm feeling this is unfair, no, this isn't the true representations, that's not what I said. You've got to sit with this stuff. Because the truth is you're getting another version of reality. It's not a false version of reality, it's just a different way of seeing truth. Recognize, number C, your need to interrupt or to put the story straight and just sit with the discomfort of it. Sitting with that is difficult. D, listen with an open attitude and compassion to the other, reminding yourself that you're listening to truth with a small t, not a capital T, and sit with that. There is no truth with a capital T. When people talk, there is no one in the room with truth with a capital T, because we all see reality through the lens of our attachment styles and programming like, I'm not good enough. That's the way we see reality. We never see truth with capital T. Yep?
What if you're sitting in a room with someone who does see truth with capital T and it's their truth?
If you're in the average relationship, with the average man who's avoidant and believes their own factual understanding of something, that would be a norm. Avoidant men, generally speaking, completely back their viewpoint no matter how distorted it is. And
dealing with truth with a capital T there.
so, but I want you to understand the background to this. Avoidants are predominantly cognitive. From childhood, they've learned to be their own advisor, their own counsel, take their own counsel. So from way back, they've learned not to deal with feelings, particularly other people's whom they couldn't cope with, but to actually work things out for themselves. So they get very confident at knowing what they know and believing it's the truth. So that's a very, very common problem. However, my experience has been that because men are really good at cognition and very logical, when I explain to them, they get it. So they don't have to keep doing the logical thing and interrupting, because they get that actually, yes, I will have a different viewpoint, okay.
And if they're with an anxious and secure person, they're listening to somebody who is driven by emotion and feeling, so it's not going to make sense, particularly if they're in the story of what's occurred. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what Lucy's referring to is B. If the anxious and secure buttons are being pushed, this is when the avoidant is likely to judge that. You're over the top, you're crazy, you're all over the place, you're just ridiculous. You know, you go off the deep end about almost nothing, and so on, right? So that is going to be the way an avoidant sees the anxious secure, because it doesn't make logical sense. And you see, their emotional reactions does not make logical sense. And so they see that as a problem, and they see them as a problem. You see how the skew happens. This is because you're viewing all reality through the skew of your attachment style plus program. Rebecca?
But the other thing that I think is really interesting, when you watch an avoidant with their tasks.
With their tasks?
Yeah,
Yes.
it is like this one. Oh my gosh, like he gets the level out and then he's like, we're doing renovations at the moment, and it's like, if it's not like absolutely perfect, it's ruined. And like the amount of like anxiety that he has around that is like, it's so interesting, because it's like, to me, I'm just like, oh, it's done. Like, what does it matter? You know? So it's like the other side of the spectrum about these jobs.
But he is a standard avoidant in this regard. So what he is doing is he's doing a task really well. Avoidants take a great deal of pleasure in doing tasks well, and they get anxious if tasks aren't being done well. Your style gets anxious if the connection isn't being done well. So we both get anxious, but for different reasons. Now that's not totally true. For example, the anxious and secure style does tasks very well around the home, for example, largely because people are going to benefit by that. So if people are going to benefit, your style can actually get anxious about making sure everything is nice to live in and comfortable and looks nice and so on. So you can get anxious around tasks, particularly if people are impacted. The crucial thing to understand is we both get anxious, and what can happen is when we get anxious, we then get controlling, because you see the alternative is that we just relax. Well, we can't just relax. If something's not level, say, and that's going to mess up and that's going to not look good, then that you can't just simply say, oh, let that go. That's fine. Everyone who sees that thing that I put up there will notice it's on a cockeye. No, that would trigger shame. No, we're not going to do that. So this is difficult. So the anxiety really dictates our lives a lot more than we see. So, number C, recognize your need to, I've been there, sorry, done that. Let's go right down the bottom. E, sit with all of this whilst watching your partner speaking, perhaps loudly, maybe irrationally, from their wounded place. Now, to begin with, you'll speak from a wounded place until you get to own it and see it, and you'll work with it. So, for example, eventually you can say, okay, I can see I'm coming from my not good enough place. Can you just hear where I'm going here? I'm coming from my not good enough place because I can see that that thing I put up there is not right, it's not level, and I can see from my not good enough, I really need to address that. Do you mind if I address it? Like, you start owning it and talking about it. And everyone's got that stuff. You can have no credibility with any problem solving or interjection if your talking partner doesn't yet feel heard or understood. Now, this is a particular problem for avoidance because their anxious partner is going to want to feel heard and understood, particularly their feelings heard. Learn first the skill of understanding so that you might then be understood. So the difficulty for avoidant men is their anxious partners usually want to talk about a feeling, but I can tell you they don't all know this. And there's a reason in my view for that, because I don't believe women growing up in our culture are used to having people listen to their feelings and valuing them. Not only that, I don't think little girls even know that anyone gives a toss about how they're feeling, and they just learn not to talk about their feelings. Our entire school system is not based on feelings, it's all based on cognition. So we grow up thinking facts matter, and even some anxious and secure people have got caught into that. The fact is, the anxious and secure feelings are crucial.
Oh, just that when the whole education system is so mentally focused, is that because we're not taught how to be with our feelings, then there's a real disconnection that can occur. Because when you learn to listen to your feelings, you're actually learning to listen to yourself. And your mind, or your mental cognition, will never give you that place of self that feelings can do. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'll just build on what Lucy said. I'll give you an example of this. If someone said to you today, how was Jeff's presentation? And you said, I enjoyed it, it was really useful. And they then said, so those are not facts. Tell me why it was useful, why you enjoyed it. Can you see what you would do? You would have to dissect the feeling and put cognitive arguments to support it. So what you'd have to do, and you would never get it right. Like if say they wanted you to specify why you enjoyed it, you could say because it was useful. Was that all? Oh, it was in a pleasant environment. Was that all? Oh, I met some interesting people. Oh, was that all? Can you see what would happen is the feeling is always a better representation of the facts. Once you try and cognitize the feeling, you start to divvy it up in a way that misses what really mattered, which was the feeling. Generally speaking, feelings are more accurate, but our society really believes facts are better. So this is a distortion that's been built into our culture. It's really, really important for anxious and secure types not only to be heard at a feeling level, but to state their feelings. Because if you're not sure of them, and many are not, because they've grown up not having those prioritized, then you can't speak clearly about what's going on for you. So it's really important to know what the feelings are. Okay, number 22. Note how you interpret another's body language and words. We learn how and what we hear as an adult from childhood experiences. So, we grow up having certain beliefs about the way we interpret another's behaviour. Let me give you an example. So let's suppose I'm having a bad day, and because I'm having a bad day, I don't talk much, don't talk to my wife, don't say anything, I'm a bit dismissive when she talks, I look irritated, maybe I am irritated. What is she going to do in terms of how she's going to interpret that? She's going to interpret that Jeff's bothered, probably with me, doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to connect, isn't interested in me, can you see a whole lot of conclusions would be drawn based on her style vis-a-vis my style. This is happening all the time. And the consequence of this is couples finish up feeling like they're not understood and they don't know how to make themselves understood. And the only way to address that is for each party to sit down. And so if my wife thinks, oh Jeff, you're a bit distant and you're a bit closed down, have I done something? Then I talk, no, what's going on for me? I've got to know what's going on for me. No, I'm stressed, so I'm closed down a bit. I'm not very engaging. I don't want to talk to anyone because I'm too busy thinking about things, how to solve a problem. Like, if we listen to each other, we can talk about where we're coming from. Don't assume your partner knows. They are unlikely to know unless they've been told a number of times, because your style is completely off their radar until you've educated them about it. Number 23. Watch for your inner button being pushed that can't cope with and avoids hearing what is said. When you are confronted with something that is just too unpleasant, unsafe, unreasonable, or too pressuring to acknowledge, you may struggle to hear or understand it. Notice this and stay tuned in. When you get good at this, you will trust that you can put that on hold and then say it later. So, my wife might say to me, okay, I can see you being dishevelled, rushing around. I didn't say anything because I could see you in a difficult space. However, I wondered if I'd done something. So what she's done is she's learned to stay with her own pattern, her own fears of being rejected and stuff like that. She knows my pattern. It could be just that Jeff's in a bad space, so she gives it time and then talks when I can talk. Can you see it takes a certain amount of practice to get to this point? But you'll be quite surprised if you're committed to it, you'll get there much faster than you expect.
Can I say also that that is not necessarily a comfortable process, that it is something that you really have to learn to do, is to learn to be comfortable with uncomfortable feelings, because it is part of the process. Does that make sense?
Because those underlying emotions keep kicking in.
Yeah, so if Jeff is, tired or whatever, and I personalise that, and I think it's something that I've done, then I need to sit with the discomfort of all the feelings that are stimulated inside of me. Like that will stimulate anxiety, it will stimulate a feeling of insecurity, maybe he doesn't love me anymore, which is ridiculous considering, we've been together for so long. But it's still an emotional pattern, and you have to learn to be with those feelings even though you're uncomfortable. And they get less the more you do it, really, because you get to know the territory so well.
Just practice, eh?
It's just practice.
She's very good. She can let me be avoidant for 2 or 3 hours at a time. Doesn't blink an eye. Okay. So listen to feelings and reflect these back, especially for connectors who usually want their feelings heard validated. Feelings or emotions, and don't worry about which it is, feelings or emotions will tell you more about a person than 1,000 clear words, which is said. So it's practice. For those with an anxious avoid or ambivalent attachment styles, listening to feelings is pivotal. So if you've got the anxious style, anything close to that anxious style, then your feelings really matter to you. It helps if the person listened to also speaks their feelings or emotions so that they are more easily understood. Avoidance can't be relied to talk about their feelings because it's really hard for them to shift into feelings from story, from cognition, from logic and reason. However, if you can put your feelings out as an avoidant, you don't have to put a lot of them. Your partner will read you very, very quickly. It's more effective if you can do it. The last word on page number 28, notice there is no need to come up with solutions or react as if the emotion being expressed implies criticism. Even if it did imply criticism, it is still not the listener's problem. We are not responsible for the feelings of others unless we've been abusive, controlling, or triggered a fight-flight response. Generally speaking, most of the reactivity of our partner is about them, unless we've been abusive, controlling, or triggered a fight-flight response. So those are the only exceptions to that rule, really. Okay, let's stay with this. So let's have a discussion about this. This cycle is repetitive. So person A does something which triggers an emotion in person B. Person B then reads that inaccurately and often personally, and so they react back and they trigger something in person A. And off we go. Two lots of emotions are being triggered, two underlying scripts like I'm not good enough have been triggered, and we're off on a fast train, and because you're in different attachment styles and you've got different triggers, no one is managing to get the other on board. That can go on for months, years, those arguments, because no one understands the other person's in a completely different place. The only way you stop that cycle is slowing down so that you both talk what's going on inside and you take the patience to do that. Now, this is the guts of all relationship stuff. Of all the skills, this is by far the most important. And it's by far the least well done. Because most of us didn't grow up with it. How often did you remember your parents sitting and saying, I've got something really difficult to speak about, Oh, okay. Okay, let me just sit down with you. And they go on about how they're really upset about something. They say, oh, you're still a bit upset, okay. And then the other person says, yeah, I can understand it. Okay, can I give my point of view? Yeah, this is I'd like to hear your point of view. Right? Can you? Not a lot of this went on, I don't think. So what I'd like you to do today is to practice this. Now, let me tell you, it is really easy. If you know that if you get triggered, you hold it. And you can even check out, I just felt criticized. You're saying that there was a problem with what I said? So what you do is you invite the other person to give, instead of reacting, you inquire, you ask for feedback. You slow it all down. Slow it down. And if it's a really difficult thing, and this is where your question came in earlier on, if it's a very difficult subject, you might want to use a prefix, an introduction. So sweet, I've got some really difficult to talk about because I really wasn't happy the way the dishes were done today. Can I talk to you about that? Right, so you've got you sort of do an introduction. You could even say, I got a bit discombobulated by what happened. Can I talk to you about that? So you, as much as possible, you say, I'm owning that I've got something that's pushed my button to talk to you about. Because it immediately helps the other person relax, stay calm, know that in fact, all you're doing is talking about you, not about them.
So people, if they hear the word you, they hear an accusation. But if they hear the word I, then they tend to relax a little bit more because they know that nothing is coming their way.
The book describes this in detail, that little piece. When you talk about something, you talk about yourself. So I was a bit bothered that the dishes were put all on top of each other and I was worried they'd fall over and break. So I'm bothered that we do that. I'm wondering if we can come up with some solution to that that wouldn't create that problem. It's all about what goes on in here. Are you with me? It's practice, because we've been taught this is selfish. The truth is, let me make a comment about selfish. It is the most ridiculous word in the dictionary. Selfish implies that if you say what's going on for you, you're more important than the person next to you. So the implication is, make the person next to you more important so they can be selfish, so that then what you want doesn't matter. Can you see how ludicrous that is? You're really saying, my set of values that I've been raised with is it's okay for you to be selfish, it's not okay for me to be selfish.
Can I say something here? That if you're told you're selfish, it's often a way of people trying to manipulate you into your viewpoint. Because as soon as you're told you're selfish, if somebody says you're selfish, there's immediately an emotional reaction. Well, I could say I have an emotional reaction if I'm told I'm selfish. It's rooted in childhood. I was told I was selfish all the time, but it was a way of being controlled. It was a way of being got to be, it was a way of making sure I behaved well, or I did what was expected. So, yeah.
I'd like questions on this if you want. We could have questions after a bit of practice. This is so important. If you come back with questions, are there any questions before we go? Because it's such an important topic. Do you feel like you're ready to give it a go? So here's what I'm asking you to do. Just wait for a second. I'm going to ask you to stay with your couple. If in fact you're with a person who isn't your partner, practice as if they are. So you get a practice of talking about yourself, where you're at, doing the introduction, all that sort of stuff. You practice that. What I'm going to ask you to do is to take any topic at all in your relationship. Don't worry if it's small, that doesn't matter. And it doesn't, if it's big, then what I want you to learn to do is to raise a topic, get into it, but not necessarily close the door on it. Because frequently what happens around things that are difficult to talk about, you need to keep revisiting them. Generally speaking, two people have different needs around everything. They have different needs around even tidiness and cleanliness, which is the main reason people come to me. It's the biggest thing they argue about. Differences around finances, differences around sexual behaviour, differences around timing, late on time and that sort of stuff. These differences are inevitable. So the notion that you are at odds with each other is absolutely inevitable. It has to happen. That's very important to understand, because if in fact you are going to be yourself, you've got into partnership with someone who's different, that's why they're interesting. But now you've got to suck it up when interesting is sort of inconvenient. Or annoying. Right? So the crucial thing is to know you're in this relationship with this person probably because if you put the two bits out, we will probably manage to work that through. But maybe not first time. Now when I've done this with couples that I've been working with, what I notice is they manage to do this, and then when they're out of my office, they struggle to do it. Now how surprising is that? But the real difficulty is it's really difficult to slow it down and trust that in fact I'm going to be heard. And it's even more difficult around big subjects that haven't been resolved. So sometimes I say, look, put two sets of cards on the table and then agree to say come back tomorrow night and pick up on them. What really matters is don't ignore them, because avoidance will say, good, that subject's off the table, great, now we can get back to normal life. Right, and that's not going to be good, because the subject really does need to be addressed sooner or later. So what we have to do is even if we come back and say, okay, look, can we talk about that topic again, even though I'm the avoid? Can we talk about that topic? I'm not sure that we've got a resolution with it, but can we just raise it again? You just patiently do this, and what you'll find is miraculous. What actually happens is you get better at it, and the big differences are much less different, because you learn to take two positions and negotiate middle territory. That negotiation is crucial, because if you don't negotiate middle territory, then someone's won and someone's lost.
And that's usually compromise too. People use the word compromise, which is different from negotiation.
That's true.
Yeah.
So the point Lucy's making is that compromise normally means someone's given up power. Someone said, I'll go along with you. Now that can happen as long as they're genuinely okay with some degree of compromise. So if it's not a big subject, a big topic, they may be fine with that. But you've got to be very careful about that. You really need to get to a point where you say, okay, I hear you do that, I prefer this, is this, what we've come to, is this our okay middle ground? You'll be amazed how fast you get at this when you practice it. It just requires practice.
Would you agree then, like, if you're negotiating for like a middle ground and you're both getting your needs met, because that's obviously the idea of it, that you're both being, you know, there's no, like, I'm doing it your way, it's my way, then you should be able to, well, the helpful response after, so say an event happens and you've discussed what, you know, the middle ground, how it will go, then afterwards there should be no like resentment or like like bad feelings on anyone's part because it was a negotiation, like, because what I guess I'm saying is like sometimes I guess I feel that there might be a situation where one of us requires like the other person to be not overly appreciative but feels like they're like you've been the other way and so you need appreciation from the other person, and then if you're requiring the appreciation you obviously haven't agreed on a middle ground where you both feel equally appreciated, if you get what I mean.
Yes.
Like if you, because you wouldn't require that verbal
Acknowledgement
of it because you've actually both had your needs met and are happy with it.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is they're wanting appreciation because they're not really getting their needs.
Yeah,
Right.
because they actually haven't like, sorry, like, because Callantine's in the thing, I'll tend to be like the empowered one, speak up, and Callan will tend to shut down. So I feel sometimes with us that he will just want the conversation done as quickly as possible and we're like off with it. So like, it will feel like to him like he's bought into
Your view.
me, and then afterwards he'll be like, you know, I want you to say that like I did well or that you were appreciative of that.
Yes.
Where I'm shocked because I'm like, what? I thought we both agreed that this was what both of us were happy with this.
Yes. It's
So-
a very good point to raise, because to raise 2 or 3 issues. First of all, the person who's most likely to compromise against what are their best interests are avoidance. Now the reason is because they just can't be bothered with the conflict, right? So avoidance is saying, well, that's not too bad, you know, it's not awful, I could probably cope with that. And what they do is they then agree even though they really disagree. So that's the first problem. Now that isn't a problem as long as they don't get resentful. But let's suppose further down the track you're not happy about what you've negotiated. What do you do then? What would you do then? You renegotiate. You simply say, hey look, I realise now, I said I'd be okay with that, I'm realising no, I'm not okay with that. Can we have another talk? You can always renegotiate even if you agree to come to something. Because the truth is, we're on the move all the time. We see the world different ways, we're in different moods, different days. So the truth is, there's never one agreement that's going to last forever. It always needs to be fluid. Does that make sense? Okay. You ready to try this? Those are good questions. Thank you for them.